I just want to jump right into it. So we are going to talk about the cards that aren't getting enough focus right now. Like with the nerfs, I think there is still an opportunity for the meta to stabilize and have cards that currently aren't seeing a lot of play or haven't seen a lot of play in the past start seeing more play. And I have three, admittedly, they're legendary cards, so not everybody can afford them, but three potentially win condition cards that you can start running in your decks that either A, I've had significant success with, or B, I'm speculating will have success and I'm probably going to try them soon. So, the first one is Grand Magus Antonidas. I'm just going to jump right into it. And I put this in my Quest Mage deck because it does really, really well into the mirror match, and it's also just a great way to do damage, because when you cast fireballs now with Antonidas, it actually works with the quest. It didn't at first, that was a bug, they fixed it, and now it works with the quest. Your fireballs will do 9 damage each instead of 6, and it's really good against the mirror match because your opponent doesn't play many minions, so you know that they're not going to play minions and you know you're not going to finish your quest, so you just burn them down as much as possible, then drop Antonidas on 8 because you have really good card draw, and you'll just win that way. And then it's also good, again, like I said, at beating other matchups, like Warlock will be low sometimes, so it could be a nice way to push. Maybe even just if you hit him twice, just like 12 extra damage or something. And it can also just be used as kind of a removal if you don't have any other removal on like in your hand. Let's just say your hand is not great, you can use it, maybe kill off 1 or 2 minions and maybe do a little bit of extra chip damage. I really like this card. I wanted it to be good in the past. It's not a good enough card to build an entire deck around. Like, it's not a great individual win condition, but it's a good like secondary win condition, which is why it's good in Quest Mage. What are your thoughts on this card?
I like it. When I first saw it, I was like, wow, that's pretty sick. It's one of the cool cards because it has setup to it as well. It's not like it just comes out, but the way that the state of the meta is right now, it feels like it may not be able to be run or like build a whole deck around it because the meta is pretty quick. But yeah, this card, if it sees more play, that means that the meta has shifted and it's kind of in a better spot. So I really do like Grand Magus Antonidas. Tony is back. I just wish he was back a little bit more, so I'm all for it.
Yeah, and he's definitely not like his own win condition. He's kind of a weird card, and I do like the setup, but the setup actually feels a little bit hard sometimes, because if you don't play a fire spell like one turn out of the 3, it messes the whole thing up and you basically got to start over. It's a little annoying, but it's not bad. The next one I want to talk about, and this is more of the speculation one that I'm going to try soon, is Gahun the Blood God. It is, for those of you who don't know, I'm not surprised, it's not really played that much. It's an 8 mana 8/8 priest card that says draw 2 cards, they cost health instead of mana. And I really like this card in Quest Priest because it's a very good way to finish off your quest while also draw extra cards that turn so you can make the most of it. So let's just say, like, hypothetically, you play this on turn 8 and you draw, you know, like a Light Shower Elemental and, you know, a Pandaren Importer. You can then immediately play those 2. You're a priest, so unless you're getting really aggroed down, you'll be able to play these 2 cards. Pretty good tempo, generate some resources, lots of stats on the board out there out of nowhere, and you just finished your quest. It's pretty good. Is it perfect? No, I do think that taking a huge chunk of damage sometimes can be bad, but think about it. Warlock and Mage are going to kill you really soon anyway if they just finish their quest, so what's 8 more damage? That's like 1 burn spell or 1 fatigue from a Warlock later on that you're probably going to lose to regardless, so might as well use that health to do something proactive. And the Quest Priest build that runs it currently has a 54% win rate after only about 500 games. And this isn't necessarily the exact build I would use. I would probably change 1 or 2 things, but at least it shows that there is some promise for this card. What are your thoughts on this card?
I like it too. For the reason that you said, I mean, it can draw 2 cards, and health is always considered a great resource. A lot of people do underestimate that fact, and that's like beginner players like don't realize it as much, that health is a resource. And when you put it the way that you did, that you know you're going to get killed anyway, you might have this chance to draw out 2 cards that could get you your win condition and just kind of push you through. So, yeah, I especially like to see this card played in something that runs corrupt cards in it. So yeah, Kahoot is something that people shouldn't be sleeping on because it draws 2. You get to play them that turn. I mean, look how good that worked out for Warlock many times. So I'm really feeling this card. I agree.
Yeah, that's like Warlock's whole thing. You draw cards using your own HP. To be fair, they have a card that literally will win them the game by doing that, but
Right.
I mean, they haven't always had that, and it's still always been good, like Life Tap for Warlock, so I think that the Cahoon has potential. It is a little bit slow at 8 mana, which is probably the reason why it's not being played, but I do think that using it as a way to finish off your quest, along with maybe like a Moarg Forge Fiend. Dude, that's hard to say. I don't know why I can't say it. I think that having that as an alternate quest completion card is nice. And then the last card for me, and then we'll get into yours, is Ringmaster Whatley. I actually really like this card. I think this card can be good for a couple of reasons, and it's not really seeing that much play. One, I think that it's good in Rush Warrior. I think that Rush Warrior is actually potentially still good. It's one of its worst matchups was Priest back in the day, and Control Priest has become basically irrelevant. Yes, some decks can still beat it, but I think that the constant board pressure from this deck and the buffed stats with conditioning is just enough to overwhelm your opponent. And then there's also Menagerie Warrior that I played recently that is mostly Quest Warrior, but also has about 4 to 5 cards of the Dragon and Mech tribe to just give you a little bit of flexibility into certain situations and make a card like Ringmaster Whatley better. And he becomes a 5 mana draw 3, 3/5, which is basically like Barrack, and Barrack is run, or Barrack Kodobane is run in every single Hunter deck basically. So I think that Ringmaster Whatley has the potential to be maybe not as good because Barrack is absolutely essential and can be really, really strong if you get Olgra off of it for free. But I think it has potential to be, if Barrack is like a 5-star card, Ringmaster Whatley could be a 3.5 to 4 cost card if you just take the time to like build a deck kind of around him. Especially considering there are other cards that are good with this archetype, like the Ringmaster's Baton, which gives a minion of all of these 3 types +1/+1 every time you attack with it. So I think that there's potential. I like this card. I ran it once and I ended up going like 6-1 with the deck I played it in. Smallish sample size, but definitely not totally irrelevant. And it felt good. What are your thoughts on Ringmaster Whatley? He's kind of an old card, actually.
It is. Well, it's old as in Madness of the Darkmoon Faire old, right? So it's from that set. Again, it's another card that, like, when I'm looking at Warrior, like, I'm trying to figure out how I could slot it into the Pirate Warrior and stuff. And I think you're right. This card definitely should see more play because draw is so important, right? And this gets you the chance. It doesn't guarantee that you'll get those 3 cards, but you'll at least have the chance to draw 3. And there's a spell that's in the Warrior that lets you draw cards as well, and it's draw is always a factor. So I believe this card is good, and I think it can be played. You could put something like Alex Straza in your deck as a closer. You could even put one of the Rush.
That's what I do actually.
Right. You could also run the Amalgamane as well, or Amalgam
exactly.
or whatever.
That's what I do too.
Right? So you got a chance there to do it. So yeah, Ringmaster is definitely a good inclusion because I still think that the Warrior, the Quest Warrior, kind of needs some help and some support. It's great, and a lot of people are playing it, but I think great more as in fun and other than really well-oiled and running well. Like the Quest Warrior is just kind of something wrong there. So yeah, I'm gonna experiment with Whatley for sure. I like Ringmaster. I think it's good.
And that was basically my 3 cards that I think are like hidden OP in this meta and should see a little bit more play. And I tried to go with ones that didn't have that much play to begin with, like Ringmaster Whatley has a 0.2% play rate, Gahoon has 0.05%, and Antonidas is the highest with a 0.4% play rate. So definitely a lot of room for these cards to potentially be good. 2 of them already have slightly above 50% win rates, Ringmaster Whatley and Grand Magus. Gahoon is about okay. Admittedly, it's a little bit low at 45% win rate, but not many people are playing it, and it's a very small sample size, and again, that doesn't mean it doesn't have potential. So I want to hear your cards. Let's jump into yours.
All right, the first one up is Sorcerer's Gambit. Sorcerer's Gambit is a card that is in the Mage class. What it is questline, cast a fire, frost, and arcane spell, right? And you get the reward of that you're going to go through these quests. And it's really powerful. At the end, it summons this card called Arcanist Dawngrasp. And I just want to hear your thoughts about that.
For a split second, I thought you were being serious. I was like, did he just accidentally read the wrong quest? Because I feel like there are like a couple of quests that need to see more play. Maybe you just like typed in quest into the search bar and accidentally read the wrong one. But no, yeah, no, I don't want to. If it were up to me, this card would have a 0% play rate. It is very non-interactive. I don't. You know what? I'm not going to get tilted. I'm better than this. What's your real first card?
Well, it's kind of a weird one because it does take a lot of play already, right? It's getting a lot of play. Rustrot Viper. We kind of went over the cards quickly about what we were going to do as far as which cards we were going to say. And Ecor mentioned that this card does see a lot of play, but it doesn't quite see the play as the way that Ecor said it, like, or the way I thought it was. Ecor, you brought up that good point about how Rustrot Viper is played rather than how I think it should be played. I think it should be played more, but you had a really good take on it.
Yeah, my take on it was basically, because what you were doing was you were looking at the amount of times played, whereas I was looking at in percentage of decks when you were coming up with these lists. And when you saw that Rustrot Viper wasn't played that much, like relatively to how much we thought it was going to be played, you put it on this list. Like, it is if you look at in percentage of decks, it is the 6th most popular card. If you look at number of times played, it drops down to about like 30th place, if not lower than that. Actually lower. I didn't actually count because it's pretty far down this list, but it's like maybe even 40, 50 cards down this list. But the reason is because it is a tech card. And it's like Acidic Swamp Ooze. Acidic Swamp Ooze, if you're not playing against a weapon matchup, you'd always just send back, right? You would never really keep that in your opening hand. But with Rustrot Viper, and that's why Acidic Swamp Ooze wasn't played as much, because in a lot of matchups it's just a dead draw. But Rustrot Viper is different. It's played in a lot of decks because if you need to, it can still be a 3-mana 3/4, which isn't terrible. But it's also a tech card like Acidic Swamp Ooze, and it's tradable. So if you draw it and you don't want to play it, you can just spend 1 mana and get a new card. And trading it away doesn't count as actually playing it, which makes me think that the times played for this card and all tradable cards for that matter are much lower than they should be relative to like how often they're seen in the decks themselves. Like, there's probably other tradable cards that have a much higher in percent of decks number than they do have a times played number, which is, that's just...
So it was a great point.
My thought process on it.
Loved it.
But yeah, you saying it's not really played that much in general does qualify for like what we were saying. Which card needs to see more play? Like, you took the literal route, and yeah, it could be played more, I'd say.
Yeah, it's interesting because the weapons were supposed to be such a thing, right? And
yeah,
in theory, it's just such a great card as far as it's a 3 mana, right? It's tradable. So you could tech it in, and you can use it to draw as well. So I just think it's a great card, and it's kind of weird that it doesn't see more play, but the way you put it, it does. So it's in a percentage of decks, as it should be, because I think it's a very versatile card. And maybe as the meta evolves again, weapons may become a thing, and it'll see more play. So the next card that I have up is one that's, talk about old school. This is from Forge in the Barrens. This is Southsea Scoundrel. And Southsea Scoundrel is a 4-mana 5/5. This is the battle cry. Discover a card in your opponent's deck. They draw theirs as well, which I think is really cool. This card is interesting as like almost a tech card, but it can be, this is sort of your disruptor card in some ways, because you can fill up a mage's hand. You can put them in kind of a weird place that they won't be able to draw, kind of mess up their plan. Maybe you get something in their hand that they wanted to have reduced cost or whatever. That's just one thing, but it does work well against the the quest for the demon hunter, you can kind of screw up their like, their hand construction, and this way they don't get outcast on you, and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a very cool card that I feel should see more play, especially now because it's a neutral. And draw is just always so important. It can get you into trouble, but I mean, it's a 4-mana 5/5. That's pretty sick just for the body alone. You could drop that on turn 4. That's not bad to have out there, especially with how much damage it can do.
Yeah, I don't really agree with this one. I agreed with Rustrot Viper to some extent, but I really do not agree with this one. I think it's just not a good card. Like, if we go through all of the classes and what's being played, Demon Hunter, yeah, you can mess up their outcast, and that will help sometimes, actually. You are correct. But there are also going to be a lot of times where you give them an extra card and they needed that extra card. Like, Death Rattle Demon Hunter doesn't have that much draw, and Quest Demon Hunter wants to draw a ton of cards. Then you have Aggro Druid, which is the most played Druid deck right now that lacks draw other than composting. Giving them a card will be helpful. Same with Aggro Hunter. Same with even just like Paladin. Yes, you can mess up Mage a little bit and even Warlock because they have a lot of cards in hand, but very infrequently will they be at 9 cards. Warlock actually is a lot. If you're saying a lot of Warlock players, I actually think this card can be good, but as only really in a Warlock meta. None of the other classes, actually that's a lie, also Rogue. So Warlock and Rogue usually have a large hand, so if you're playing against a lot of those two classes, this card could work very well. But most of the other ones, like we said earlier with Gahoon, generating resources and drawing cards, giving your opponent the opportunity to draw a card, it's just so valuable. It thins out their deck, makes it more likely for them to draw something else. And most of the time, you're not going to mess your opponent up. And you will get an extra resource, that's not wrong, but your opponent will get one specifically designed for them. Like, if I were, let's just hypothetically say I'm running this in a Control Priest deck to help mess up my opponent, and I'm playing against a warrior and I get like a Shield Slam. Well, I just got a useless card, and my opponent just got a really good card. And yes, you can choose, but let's just say they're all like fairly bad options, and you're like, okay, well, Shield Slam's the lesser of 3 evils. And I don't know, I like this card a lot, and I really like this card last expansion. I don't know if you saw my little series where I was playing mill whatever. I literally tried to make a mill deck with every single class and run this card in every single deck, and I used to love it. I just don't think it works right now because they want to draw cards, they want to finish their quests quickly, or they want to get their cards for aggro. And I don't agree with this card very much.
I see your point, and I just think that it's a good card, and I totally see your point. I didn't say I wanted to play it. I just want them to play it because since it's such a bad card, we can put it in their decks.
You want them to play it so we can climb easier on the ladder. That's a good idea.
Yes, they're helping us. They're helping us. Yeah. But the next card that I had was Kazakus. I just think this card, I just wanted it. It's more of a desire to have Kazakus play more, right? And the problem is like, I thought that it would get more support. What I mean by that is I thought that they wouldn't make 4-mana cards that were necessary to continue in the quests and things and just different things. I thought that Kazakus would be a thing, kind of like they just killed it. And it's more of an emotional thing because I put so much onus on saying that Kazakus was the best card because when we had originally spoke about Kazakus, it was like, oh man, I thought the card was bad. And then you told me, oh, it makes golems of different sizes. I just like the versatility of the 1/5 and the 10 and the lifesteal of the things that you get. I just think it makes for a good gameplay because you think, and then your opponent has to kind of guess where you're at. So maybe I'm saying that this card should see more play, but it should be constructed differently. Kazakus, I like the mechanic and the way it works. What are your thoughts on it?
I think Kazakus is a really interesting card because it's actually got like the opposite problem of the Rustrot Viper. It is played in 1/3 of the decks. It is in percentage of decks. That number is 1/3 of Rustrot Vipers, but it's played, at least over the past couple of days, it's been played tens of thousands more times, like 20,000 more times almost.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because he is so good that if you do draw him, you almost always play him on turn 4. He will almost always be played, but he's not really in that many decks. I do think that he works quite well in a rogue deck and a druid deck if you don't run the Park Panther.
Yep.
So I definitely do think he has a spot in the meta. It's just not as prevalent as I would have liked to have seen it. I do agree. Like, you can't run it in Quest Priest because you need other 4 costs. Yep. Paladin, you've got Blademaster Samuro, which is, and Cariel Rome, which are 2 good legendaries that you want to use. Right. Demon Hunter, even if you could run it, which you can't really because of the Persistent Peddler, it's very good in every single Demon Hunter deck. You want to draw cards, and it doesn't really do that. Hunter, you've got Piercing Shot, you got Rinling's Rifle, Warsong Wrangler. You might be able to fit it in Hunter. You could probably fit it in a Hunter deck and not run Piercing Shot or Rinling's Rifle or Warsong Wrangler. It's possible, I'd say. And maybe in Quest Hunter, you take out the Piercing Shot because that's the only 4-cost card you run, and you run Kazakus. Maybe I'll try that out, actually. That's not a bad idea. Take out 2 Piercing Shots, throw in Kazakus, and put in like one other tech card. It's not a bad idea. But like, other than that, Mage, you need Fireball and Fire Sail. Right. Shaman, you need the Canal Slugger and or Granite Forgeborn to make all of your elementals cost less. Warlock needs Soul Rend for sure. Soul Rend's like its only good board wipe. So it's just, you're correct. There are a lot of good 4-cost cards that make it really hard to play this card. And it's a little bit disappointing.
Yeah, it's just a cool card. And so it's a more of an, again, I'm getting emotional over my Kazakus card. You can't play this one alongside Cheesemonger either. So, I'm really upset about that. But hey, that's all I got for today. And we're going to talk about more in the second segment. We're going to talk about how to use the HS replay and like basically how Ecor and I do it when we talk about all this stuff, because we have the statistics and stuff in front of us, but we're going to expand on that a little bit more in the next segment.